Hi everybody, this will be part one in a character UV mapping tutorial series. This will actually be a continuation of the character modeling tutorial series where I started from some basic cubic shapes and then extruded out and built a full human form. So I will link the videos to start the character modeling video series in the comments to this video. In case you want to go back and review any of the steps that I went through in the previous videos. But this video is going to start from the finished model and then start UV mapping the character. So a couple things just to reiterate. Whenever you finish modeling, it's a good idea to select all of your geometry. And before we start UV mapping, we're going to go to Edit, Delete by Type History. I've already done that here, but I can do it again because it's not going to hurt anything. And then modify freeze transformations. Okay, so the freeze transformations will take any existing incoming translate, rotate, or scale values and convert them to a value of 0 for translate and rotate and a value of scale to 1. So if for whatever reason we accidentally move and rotate and scale our character and even our eyes or any other accessories we may have, all we'll have to do is put a value of 0 for any translate and rotate and put a value of 1 for any scale. So let's take our eye geometry pieces, put a value of 0 for them, and then we go right back to our initial starting point. So that's a good way to make sure that in case we make some mistakes, we can always get back to where our geometry was originally placed. So before we move forth into UV mapping, we want to delete the history and freeze the transforms. So we're going to use my UV editing window. In the workspace, if I go up to workspace and change this to UV editing, I will be able to see my 3D view and my UV view. So with our 3D view and UV view selected, our existing UV seams are visible, and it creates those as we start to model different forms of the body. But this is not what seams we want to use. So we always want to ignore the existing seams, and then as we UV map our character, we will correct and create proper UV seams. So we also initially want to ignore what the UVs look like to begin with, because, well, it doesn't look like a character, and we're going to recreate the seams and unfold it properly with proper seams. So what the existing UVs and UV seams look like is unimportant. We're going to correct that within these video series. So this first video is going to talk about setting up a good starting point for UV mapping, and then the next videos we'll get into the major body parts. Okay, so in the UV editing, the white edges are our cut seams, and the green, or if we are in a subobject mode like edge, the blue seams are our sewn edges. It's really important where to place seams and to understand what a cut seam versus a sewn seam is, a sewn edge. So how the system is going to unfold our character or body parts is going to be based off of where the cut seams are. So wherever these white seams are going to be, that's where it's going to use those seams to unfold the geometry. So we want to ignore the existing ones. The first thing I usually do is select my object, the body or all of the parts, and I go up to UV and planar. Okay, so that will clear out any existing seams. Now, one also other thing to consider is we want to make sure the geometry is clean. And one thing we can do before we even do the planar map is to select the body, and before cutting any seams, just go click unfold. And we'll give it a couple seconds, see what it's going to try to do. So this unfold tool will tell us if we need to clean up anything. It'll give you a warning or error if there's any non-manifold geometry, and it'll ask you to clean that geometry up if it's needed to be cleaned up. So if that prompt does come up and says, hey, there's not a manifold geometry on your object, do you want to fix that? Choose yes, fix that, and see if it is going to unfold. So it took the object, it unfolded the forms, they're not unfolded properly, but I know that there's no unclean geometry. So if there's not a manifold, you have to clean it up, otherwise these next steps are not going to work. If the unfold tools cleanup with non-manifold doesn't work, you can try to go to mesh cleanup with the option box and go to turn on non-manifold. Try to clean it up this way to see if that will clean it up as well. If one of those two cleanup tools do not work, you have to manually go find where those non-manifold issues are, which can take some time. But before we actually unfold the UVs properly, the geometry cannot have any non-manifold geometry with it. So one of the first things I do is just take the body form and I just click unfold to see if there's any non-manifold, see if it'll unfold. So the next step, as I mentioned earlier, is to select the body and go to UV and go to planar map. Now this will get rid of the seams and create a snapshot from one particular angle of the character. So right now it's taking it from the y-axis because that's what the angle of the planar tool was as default. But if I select the object, or what I had it set as before, select the body, if I go to the option box beside planar, let's do the z-axis, which is the front axis. And when I do project, it should look like the character. Now this is not what we will leave the UVs at, but this at least allows the UVs to be recognizable as a character. So it also clears out the cut seams, the white seams, so that I can start from scratch without having to correct any existing cut seams. Alright, so now I'm ready to go in here and create some cut seams. Last thing we're going to talk about with this video is just how to create a cut seam. So what I'm going to do in some later videos is select some edge loops and go in here in the UV editing toolkit and open up the cut and sew. If none of these are open, you can just select the drop down arrow to open them up. The two main ones we'll use are the cut and sew and the unfold. So the blue or green seams, depending on if you're in object or sub-object mode, that is a sewn seam, so that's what sew does. But when I select an edge or edge loop and click cut, that makes that edge loop a cut seam. Okay, I can also consequently take that edge loop and do sew, and that will sew that edge back together. So in order to unfold the different body forms, we'll take our edges and we'll do cut, or we'll take edges and do sew. And then the next step after that, after we get the cut seams set up for that body form, we will then do unfold. So that'll wrap it up for this video as far as introducing the process and what we'll be doing to get started to properly unfold a character model. The next video we'll come back and start cutting up the edges and unfolding body parts.